So as we ask these questions, if y'all have more questions, can they raise their hand or just want to put it on paper? And then,
Sure, they can raise their hands, it's fine. Because I'm sure as this conversation get going, there'll be more questions.
okay, so under written procedures, which may get to fall under another category too, does the code of conduct have to be a separate policy or can it be within the procurement policy?
It can be within the procurement policy. Just as long as it's a part of it. It can be separated or it can be within that policy just as long as it's all together and you're following it. Okay, what was the question? Thank you.
Do you want me to read it, say it again?
Or just
Well, for our Zoom audience.
either way, either you read them or read them from here, so they can hear the question.
All right. Does the code of conduct have to be a separate policy or can it be within the procurement policy?
And my response to that question was, it can be either or, just as long as it's together and that it's being followed.
Is it okay if I add something to that?
Yes,
Okay.
please,
So,
please.
just to add to that, when we had procurement reviews this year, one of the things was they did not want the districts to copy what was in the procurement, just copy and paste and say, that's my code of conduct. They want you to individualize it. They want it to reflect your district. So just make sure it's just not copied and pasted. Because there were, and then also when they asked for that, like Therese said, it's part of that, it's part of your policy, but they don't want a 17-page, here's my code of conduct. They want that, you know, they want you to give them that one paragraph or that one statement, not 17 pages.
And I would have a header that says code of conduct.
And I know Therese was saying we're not trying to give you answers to the test, but I mean, those are situations that came up. So we learn from the past to move forward, you know, so that's just something that had happened this last year.
Yeah.
Okay, I think
Yeah,
I'm going to move the parking lot.
yes.
Not that I can afford to get some more steps in today.
No, but it's one of those things that I may not have the answer. You may have the answer, or Jocelyn may have the
I
answer.
just don't want to.
Right. No, it makes sense. All right, so moving over to purchasing methods. Software. All programs within vendor multiple years can't afford to change what is allowed. Okay, so with that, there's a number of things that can be done. Some of that could go back to like your non-competitive purchasing methods that some CEs have been successful to use in regards to like either a sole source or another method would be as well as you would still do like your small purchase procurement. It all really goes back to what TDA says according to you. So my suggestion would be in this particular situation that you would start off with like a sole source type of situation and just type out and send to TDA, well, this is my problem. I have this software, all programs within the vendor, multiple years, really can't afford to change it. And then they will tell you from there whether or not they are able to approve that sole source or if you would have to move forward and send out for bids with that particular software. So it's one of those questions that really you can go a number of ways. There's no single answer, but that would be my suggestion.
Are there any districts that maybe you've seen this situation with, like they've been using the same software year after year after year, and they don't want to change softwares for maybe unmanaged reasons? What is your experience with that?
What I just told you, that has been my primary experience. And its software is actually this is a common question because it all goes back to like that menu planning software or any type of POS type of deal. But that would be my answer is if you can get sole source approved, just having your documentation listed out, send it over to TDA They would be the ones to determine whether or not that will be approved or not. If not, then you're going to have to send out for 3 bids when it comes to that. But that would be a strategy. But there's no black and white type of answer with that. Yes.
Well, so getting a PR this year for last year, are they gonna be looking for that? They're gonna be asking for your bids for your point of sale from last year?
Yeah. Well, I mean, whatever.
And if you, on like, what, nobody's doing that for their point of sale, so you would just not have that?
Yeah, you would just not have, you would just write a statement, just basically stating, okay, I was unaware, but this is what I'm going to do moving forward. But the good news is with the procurement reviews, there aren't any fiscal actions at this time. It's really more of a learning experience type of scenario. So.
And we have seen sole sources been approved. So if your question was, I know over here, is it possible to get a sole source? We have seen some get approved with documentation. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't imagine if you would say, if you're a school with 10 schools, you have multiple point of sale, you have multiple modules of the one, you know.
But at some point, you have to say, is it still cost effective?
Well, it wouldn't be cost effective to have to go spend $100,000.
No, of course not. But at some point, right? So maybe you have to revisit it. So TDA wants to see documentation. So maybe not every year, but every couple of years. Like, are you still looking at it and document it? Did you already say the documentation part?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't document it, it didn't happen. And the way you document it is the way it happened. So make sure your documentation, they just want to make sure you're considering it. Even if you're not.
Even if you're not.
I think too, like, the justification of how much, like Trelise was saying, like, if you, like, geographically, you have to buy something because you're so far, and it's not reasonable to go 40 miles to get something. So what would my anticipated cost be to change over to this program? So would it be financially in my best interest to do this? No, because, I mean, like, if you documented your labor that it would cost you to transfer over, documented the cost of that software. So I think it's just like, we're all gonna agree it's a pain. But we all have to agree too that we have to be diligent and resourceful of the money and where it's coming from to be able to support, continue to support this program. But that documentation, like, how many hours does somebody spend on this program roughly, in a year? What would the training cost be? What would, all of that to back that up?
Well, in the other part that I'm thinking about is the fact that it's not broke. It works fabulous, and we have no reason people want to change. So why would we be out there looking? Then we constantly see other programs where we know what's going on, but the current one we use is fine.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want to spend federal funds replacing companies who don't fine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just all of that justification, like, almost, I used to tell my kids, like, if they were looking for a new job or something like, or whatever they're gonna do in like this big decision, here's all my pros and here's all my cons, and these are all the reasons I wanna stay with this, but documenting along the way, I mean, like, start documenting now stuff so that, because I'm gonna tell you in 2 weeks, I'm not gonna remember what I did today. I'll remember what happened to me yesterday, but, because my car got broken into. Don't hide your purses, but we can't remember. It's just too hard to remember what we did 2 weeks ago.
And plus too, like when it comes to software, chances are really high if you've been using that particular software, it's going to come out even on paper that, okay, well, to maintain what I currently have is cheaper than to go and install all these other new systems anyway. So, so that's something else that could put at ease and make you feel a bit more safe in terms of sticking with what you currently have. And plus, I mean, this software deal, it comes up so common. I wouldn't be shocked if 6 months down the line, there's a section just on software in the ARM and think, because it keeps coming up. Yeah, it does. All right, so here we have small purchase method. When seeking these quotes, is it necessary to have them from the district's approved vendors, or can they be from any vendor? That's totally fine. That's totally fine to go ahead and do that, just as long as you're having those 3 quotes and all the stipulations in place, and that it's just showing that you're following proper procurement procedures. I don't have anything more to that. Do you? Just basically, when seeking quotes, do they have to stick with their list of approved vendors, or can they go outside?
It is, and approved vendors are kind of a false security, if you will. Just because they are on a list doesn't mean that you're comparing apples to apples, the exact item that you're purchasing at that time. And so I don't know what the criteria is for them to get on your district list, but I'll tell you, here at the service center, we still have to get 3 quotes from different vendors at the time of purchase. So an approved vendor list doesn't necessarily mean that you can just order from them without looking at prices at that time, but it may be your starting spot that your district says you have to use the ones that are on here.
I'm not able to pay vendors that aren't approved though. Like if there's an invoice.
Sure.
Now, if I have to go out and get a micro purchase or use a credit card, that's fine. But for small purchases or anything like that, if they're not an approved vendor, I can't pay their invoice.
Sure. You still have to do price comparison.
In addition to that though, if they're an approved vendor from your district, TDA is going to ask, so who had PRs last year, procurement reviews last year? Anybody in the room? Nobody? Oh yeah, oh yeah. So if your district, how did they procure, or how did they determine how they were an approved vendor? They go back and they look at the district level. If you purchase under that umbrella at the district level, how were they procured? They're going to go to the district level, not just Child Nutrition. So that's why it's so important that the purchasing at the district level also follows these guidelines. And they're going to go back and look at some of those at the district level that you purchase under that umbrella. So that could be cleaning supplies, or it could be pest control, or it could be, I mean, there could be things that you're under that district umbrella. How did they procure that, and how were they approved? Does that make sense? So it's at the district level too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking loud, so those can
No, I appreciate it. I'm sure the Zoom ones can appreciate
It's still a little
it too.
foggy for them.
It is?
I'm trying
Okay.
to type this.
Okay. Micro purchases. Is this per item or per category? Okay, so with micro purchase, that would be just per purchase, just that one-time deal, just that one particular item. It's straight or category. I'm not
circumvent the process.
Right.
right.
So the process being, like if you need some kind of special roles, let's say for catering, you can't just say, well, I'm always going to go to Central Market and get these rolls, and and over the period of the year, it becomes over $3,500 I spent on rolls. But each time it was only $150. Well, I can't circumvent that process. So that's what we have to. That's what they will be looking at, those micro purchases. If they see repetitive purchases of similar items from the same place, what do you think they're going to do? Add those together. That's what I think they're going to do. Add them together. Are they over $3,500? Now we've just posted ourselves over that threshold, right?
So basically, my question was per item or per category? You said roll. So is it just because the rolls? I don't deal with food services much, but it's on like office supplies. Do you go buy office supplies or you go buy pens, pencils? How is a micro purchase?
For the aggregate. I wish I knew
It
the
hasn't
exact
been
answer.
defined. So on the procurement tool, it's gonna ask for the vendor. And so it's gonna have Office Depot, Walmart, and then they're gonna say, okay, now send me a sample of that. And then as long as you can justify it's per
For what?
item.
That's the main question. When we buy with federal funds, and then when I buy office products, if I go, yes, they do purchases less than $3,500 per order.
It hasn't been defined. It is a great question.
And let me tell you, I think that that's why here at the service center, that they're requiring us to get free quotes on everything.
And that's what we're trying to do.
I mean,
I know
it's
food service is doing that, so it's a pick. This is what I have.
We can put this in the
Is
TDA
there
file.
an acronym for that?
This is a pay.
They don't want to do it because they're saying, I'm not spending $3,500 on camp. I know, and that was my main question. I don't know about which, then my request.
The only way you do is if it becomes district policy. That's how ours is.
Right, okay.
I mean,
So
that's what we have to do the same thing here. And we're like, we don't go under acre. They're like, it's region 11. Region 11 says this, so you will do it. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up to what she's asking? One of the big advantages of micro purchase for us is if I gotta fix the equipment down, obviously I don't want that piece of equipment down for any time, because that affects food safety, quality, everything else. So that's where I'm gonna probably use my micro purchase, because a lot of these vendors will not give me a quote for not working on this equipment, so I can't get 3 quotes ahead of time. Because they're gonna charge me to give me a quote. Well, that's dumb to pay reasonable people a charge to come out and give me a quote. So I may have a lot of micro purchases and they may exceed that, but what's the alternative there? I mean, bidding out, that's a complicated thing to bid out.
So, repairs?
Yes.
When I came up with that idea, and I'm not sure if they do it or not, can you not get quotes? Like a basic quote, like, hourly rate, how many times a year, how far in advance do I need to call you, what if you're there after hours, just basic stuff that anybody can charge you, and then you decide who you go with. That's the only thing. That's what.
I mean,
Questions for the basic charges, and then you can make a decision who will be the best.
and so you kind of developed like Troy's was saying, a score sheet, a rubric, like, that's that word. A new score sheet wasn't correct. So you created a rubric for your kind of emergency situation.
For repairs.
For repairs. And the thing is they want us to spread the wealth. So if you're going to the same service person time after time after time, and we're not spreading the wealth of people, if we haven't gotten a bid, then we have provided the opportunity for them to bid. So I mean, we were just talking about this yesterday, because I was like, this is something I don't feel comfortable with. And I don't feel like we've gotten like a black and white answer from even TDA, and I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but it's a tough call. I mean, like, you don't know, you could have a brand new piece of equipment or a piece of equipment that's 15 months old and it breaks down, and you've got one that's 15 years old and it's still functioning fine. So you're anticipating that one and then this one, and I mean, I don't know what's going to break down when it's going to break down. You know, I don't know. Do y'all have any?
The only thing I could think of, just bouncing off your example of new equipment, is even when you're sending out solicitations, you may want to add like specs in relation to maintenance. That's another way into going about doing that I could think of at the top of my head. And then also,
Like a service agreement maybe for like a 3-year time frame or something?
Right.
Your old equipment.
I've also been hearing that, and tell me if this is true or not, but a lot of people aren't bidding anymore if they weren't awarded historically.
Yes.
So now those second and third quoters are like, you're
You're not
not.
gonna choose me anyway.
So now you don't have a comparative data, and I've been hearing that, so I'm glad y'all agree. I don't know what the solution is, but, yeah, that's frustrating for sure.
we're documenting, we've got a written quote form. We request the three, if they refuse, we write it on.
Exactly.
On the form, take the best, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you're documenting what happened for sure. I was having Trelise pull up 17.41 because it does have a description here for aggregate. And so that is the best that we can do at this point. But the aggregate is the total for a micro purchase amount, is the total cost for a single invoice for a single purchase or transaction. It is not an accumulation of weekly, monthly, or annual purchase. It is individual purchase with an individual invoice. However, the total cost for a micro purchase contract may be broken into multiple invoices, which are paid when specified expectations are met. In this case, the aggregate is the total cost when all of the invoices are totaled. There you go. That's what I know.
So you purchase a piece of equipment, it breaks, you have a service call, you have, that's an invoice. You have the replacement equipment part, that's an invoice. You have the installation of that, and that's an invoice. They can't exceed the 3,500, but they were individually invoiced. That could still be a micro purchase.
It could. And it's giving more examples about individual food items here, but then you see a little bit more detail for examples on one-time only purchases, and then delivery of single purchase over a period of time, and then very small routine purchase. So
And so there's,
it's possible.
so is this one of those areas where TDA and EGRE are not quite on board with each other? Because from an EGRE perspective, and I know EGRE is not playing today, but from an EGRE perspective, we use that micro purchase as a determinant of whether or not the place that we're purchasing from has been EGREized. Walmart. So do we have to get EGRE documents from Walmart to go and make a micro purchase with federal funds? No, we do not. But with TDA, we don't have that. So are we having to look at something different than what we're looking at with EGRE with those micro purchases? Those are the things that make, not nutrition people, but purchasing people.
Right. I believe all we need from TDA is the
So that's where EGRE is
justification.
more
Strict.
defined than TDA.
This is what we know. I wish I had more in-depth answers, but as far as you, that's what we know. As far as with micro purchase.
I was going to say too, like for repairs, kind of what you could use as a threshold is go back and look, what kind of repairs did I have last year? If I'm going to put it out for bid, to project what I might go out for bid for this next year. Now, we're pretty safe within 10%, right? Because you can have like a 10% window. So if we kind of use that as our measuring stick, then that might could be something you could use for those repairs. So that might be a possibility.
Stuff on equipment. I was looking to see if there was something in here on repairs. I remember reading something on repairs. Okay, and while you look, I can move on to the next. Yeah. All right. If a purchase is over $50,000 and you will now need to do an IFB or an RFP, or can you utilize a purchasing cooperative contract? So I believe what this question is asking is, do I, the CE, have to do a formal procurement method, or can I just use my co-op? I believe that's the question. If a purchase is over 50 grand, if it's over their threshold. Yeah.
But it really depends on what you're purchasing.
Right.
And who your co-op is with. Some of you have purchased like, and you might think of it as a co-op, like Buy Board. You know, and if you're gonna purchase through there, but what TDA, and I mean, this could have changed, but I remember Robin telling us, we don't know how Buy Board, y'all were up at Burkeville, and Robin was like, we don't know how Buy Board decided how they were, and what kind of documentation did they send to my board to get as an approved person on their deal. So if you're talking about food, like we know our co-ops, like the multi-region purchasing co-op and Prospering Houses are the only two I know of that service our area. We know that they have been scrutinized a lot. And so your purchases probably are over 50,000 with them. I mean, a lot of you are. But if it's something else, I mean,
I don't see why you couldn't use your purchasing co-op if that's the point.
if
But-
it's food,
Right.
but if it, does anybody want to expand on, not trying to, I mean, is it equipment or food that we're talking about? Or something else? I don't know.
Okay.
The Buy American is food related, right? Just for food products or everything?
Everything.
So that was my question on the office supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So we bought office supplies through several approved vendors in our district. I don't, they're piggybacked off another co-op or some reason they're approved vendors. I don't know how they did. Do I need to know that?
Well, and I think that's kind of why, like, we're trying to bring in other people besides just child nutrition, because how were those bids, or how were they awarded? Did they meet this criteria? And you got child nutrition, we don't know on some of those things. That's why it's more of a district thing on procurement than just child nutrition. So yeah, I mean, we don't know all those details. The procurement person in the district should know these things.
They have to pick in and search the.
But doesn't that go back to what you said a while ago about what is your district umbrella? So you office supplies. None of us in purchasing bid office supplies. That's done for us. We buy that off of Choice or Buy Board or something because we don't recreate that deal and try to rebid that. So we do our due diligence, our research to make sure that it meets all of the guidelines. So when they look at our child nutrition, we're buying pencils from Staples. How is the district buying it? Well, the district buys it from this umbrella, and then we need whatever. But now you're saying Buy American on pencils?
Well, no, I mean, so what's the,
I'm just writing.
it's, no, but what's the justification for the district choosing who they buy from? I mean, how do they show that they met the purchasing requirement
At the district level.
to make sure that they follow child nutrition? I mean, child nutrition is purchasing something. Does it follow the child nutrition, or I should say USDA, guidelines? I mean, is that y'all's understanding too?
Yeah,
Okay, so
that's
what do I
my
do?
understanding.
I go to the ARM. So when I go to the ARM about this, it's on page 17.55. And although it specifies,
Well, Jocelyn, if we can prove that she brought up pencils.
Yeah.
China pencils were 10% of the cost of what American pencils are, then they'll have that exception, right? That's that.
Yes.
Right, that's how that works.
I do want to do disclosure.
Right.
We don't
Yeah.
have to document that, and we can't document that if we don't know how the procurement was done
Right.
on state consent. That's the problem.
It just says food up there, y'all.
Yeah,
No.
that's.
All purchases, the Buy American provision applies to all purchases made with S&P funds.
So it talks about the food being 51%, but then it has that piece too, so it almost.
Unless you're buying.
but it must be included, like you're saying, in the process. It doesn't necessarily say.
Say it has to be, right. Okay. Yeah. Mostly food. Okay, so just add that. Yeah, I have a TDA list starting already over here. So I'll just add that to the list to ask them.
It's mostly about food in this section.
Mm-hmm.
But we need clarification on that. Is it just
Mhm.
food or?
Or is it everything?
And then what?
And we don't want it to be everything.
Right.
If you're just doing micro purchases for your office supplies, since you're so small, they don't charge.
It does not include equipment per niche at TDA per another director. So
Is Mitch on?
he is not,
Oh,
but they
okay.
have already asked this question.
Ah,
Non-food, that's the question. Non-food is the
You
question.
just give the pencils away?
Only with candy bar.
Yes. Ribbon on a bow. There's a pencil and a sticker.
all right. Vendor list. Vendor list on page 17.9. District has approved vendors for office supplies. We get 3 quotes. Okay. I do not know if Office Depot is by, okay, yeah, we just covered that. Do I have to have a contract for each vendor? So that's going back to, you were wondering if it had to be by American, Kathy, or?
I didn't know what the criteria, like if I go research the bid, and say we're piggybacking on, or using a co-op and Region 7 or whatever. So I open up their information, I have to go see what documentations they sent back for this bid. And then if it's one by American, I don't know. I mean, what list of stuff am I looking for office supplies? So
Okay, yeah, and that kind of, yeah, and that goes back into our TDA clarification, so that's already been added to the list.
On the
Yes.
Region website, there is a Buy American provision tab, and under it, there's the CFR for Buy American exceptions list, or yes, exceptions list. Very, very long, so I can't really see it all on my phone, but it breaks it down into supplies, construction, equipment, those types of things, and what's allowed, what's not allowed, so that.
Maybe we can pull that up after lunch and look at it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So MRPC, multi-region purchasing co-op, is done
Part of that,
part of that.
yeah.
But I mean, that's still information that applies to all of us. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
the CFR, we all need to be in the same party
Mhm. Okay. If I have a brand of refrigeration equipment that has far fewer mechanical issues than other brands, must I get permission from TDA ahead of time to specify that brand of equipment in my bid? So with this particular question, I'm assuming what they're asking is, I believe this would fall under non-competitive or inadequate non-competitive procurement method. But with this, you would just have that documentation just to back that up. You wouldn't need to contact TDA every single time for a situation like this, just as long as you have that documentation in place to justify whenever you're getting that piece of equipment fixed or just for that brand of equipment.
So are you talking about like every time it breaks down, break down?
Yeah, I'll read it again. If I have a brand of refrigeration equipment that has far fewer mechanical issues than other brands, must I get permission from TDA ahead of time to specify that brand of equipment in my bid? Yeah, and the answer to that, once again, is no, just as long as you're also following your procurement procedures as well, too. Because, again, you don't want to overly just leave all other competitors out in the process. I hope that answered that question. I can't decipher whether they're talking about fixing equipment or you're just wanting to buy a certain brand.
You would set up your criteria ahead of time.
Yes.
Then your pricing is going to be your main factor. Your root, but then other factors consider are repair rates and knowledge on equipment. You just have to line that out
Mm-hmm.
so you can choose going.
Okay.
That's how I would recommend.
Okay.
You talked about not narrowing over and over, and they're not narrowing it down. Our maintenance department, they know what pieces of equipment they have to work on those. So we buy equipment, we say, what brand what do I need to purchase? And they say, you need to get this type of refrigerator, this type of freezer. They know what they have to work on most frequently. Allow them to advise us on right specifications, but it talks about don't narrow your specifications too much. I like to look at the long-term cost. If that kind of makes sense. So that's kind of where the question's coming from.
I think Sandra's right about the scoring though. You would include that in your scoring criteria, but you may not always have that repair person in-house either. So it can't be just because the person you have, that's the only thing they know.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does, but when you start writing these bids,
Yes.
like, when I'm gonna replace, I mean, I'm gonna,
It can't have a specific brand name unless you say or equivalent. Correct, Shirley?
Right, or equivalent.
Equipment is an extra $20,000 for the equipment to buy a $500 training course to learn and work on that.
well, it's not a matter of training when I'm asking, what I'm asking about, it's a matter of what we have the most frequency in having repaired. I don't want to call them specific name brands, but there's some name brand ovens that we work on all the time, or there's name brand steamers that we work on all the time. We don't buy those anymore because how frequently we work on them.
Sure.
Whereas I know this brand of equipment, we don't have to work on so much. I specify that. The problem with or equivalent, when you're writing these bids, is who determines or equivalent. Now, we put in there determined by owner, and substitutions have to be approved ahead of time, but you're getting multiple vendors who are going to install bidding this. You kind of, it gets very complicated when you start.
It does.
Mhm.
Complicated is a true statement. But you can't start with essentially a brand in mind. You have to be inclusive.
Right.
You can probably still get to the end result, but it has to be fair and open.
And what just popped in my head too, you could write a statement to TDA stating your situation, like, okay, well, this is the specific brand that I have for this equipment. This is why, because of maintenance, and then justify those costs, even down to training and maintenance of the equipment and things. And then from their response, that would be bounced off of whether or not you really do need to include other brand names or not. I just remembered that particular section. It left me, but then it came back.
For sole source, you mean?
For sole source.
Is that what you're meaning? Is that what you're saying to ask TDA for?
I want to say it was sole source, but there was a section on brand names where it specifically talked about if you're looking to do that brand name, you can list it out. Just be sure that you're not excluding other brands as well too, and that it has to have this criteria, like what makes this specific brand so great versus this other brand, and then being able to list out exactly, well, we found out it's this particular part or piece or function of it, I don't know, as to like why it breaks down less versus this other piece of equipment. And 17.54.
So if we state this brand or equivalent, substitutions must be approved by owner prior to use of the vehicle.
Let's see.
History, you have policy with it in your evaluation just by past performance.
Okay, yeah, so it would be considered sole source. So that would be your purchasing method here. And it's on page 17.54.
On your rubric, can you put reputation of brand as one, and then that be like a high priority? Or a high,
What's going to be your measuring stick?
Mm-hmm.
How can you measure reputation?
by how many times that piece of equipment is broken
I mean,
down
you
in the
wanna
kitchen
have-
last.
Yeah, and that's fair, just you've got to have that definition of reputation, not like, well, I don't like them. You know, because sometimes we don't want it to be the salesperson.
Not
Yeah.
subjective.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you can,
Rebate, like-
and if you can support that reputation piece by, for example, you have a history of service tickets that have been over a course of time that have been worked on that particular equipment as your backup source as to, well, according to all of these service tickets that we've submitted and that maintenance worked on, to just go back to in order to measure that level of reputation as well too in that particular standpoint. But here it says, brand name sole source purchase, 17.54 when there's a compelling need, such as compatibility with current equipment. To purchase a specific brand or service, the CE must have documentation that demonstrates that other available brands are not compatible with the CE's current equipment, replacement part inventory, and maintenance staff's expertise. However, even if the CE meets the brand name sole source purchase criteria listed above, it must still determine there is more than one supplier for the brand of equipment or the service. If there are multiple suppliers, the CE must follow normal procurement processes in its awarding a contract. So there it is. Either way, when you're doing like a sole source, you would need to contact TDA and just having that documentation piece ready for you. So it really just depends on just getting back to your question. Yeah, must I get permission from TDA ahead of time to specify brand of equipment in my bid? I would say yes.
One, replacing it, we have to do yes, that we gotta put this information in, we write a letter to the mailer.
You would, no, you would just, the easiest thing to do would be just to send just a written letter to that procurement email address that's on that resource management piece. And there is, I believe it's ce.procurementreviews.Texas Department of Agriculture. I believe it's that email address, but you would send it to them. And then you would just follow the process as far as like description as to like why you developed, why you're seeking to do like a sole source for that piece of equipment. And that can be found on page 17.53 as well. Oh yeah, here it is. It's at the top of 1754. As far as like what you need to submit to TDA. You're welcome. Okay. All right, 2 or more responsible offers on bid. If you advertise your bid in newspapers for 2 weeks and give 2 weeks for a response, do you still have to have 2 offers? I believe for, let's see, 2 weeks, that's what, 14 days? If those 2 weeks fall, I believe that goes back to your procurement procedures. Like if that time limit is mentioned within your procurement procedures as far as that's the appropriate amount of time to wait for responses to come back, then you can move forward and claim like inadequate response as a non-competitive procurement method. But just going back to the beginning, with USDA, they do recommend at least within like a month's time or like around 45 days or so. Like that's recommended, but it's not mandatory to have that time limit. So I would say it goes back to your written procurement procedures.
Does anybody else have any experience with especially service and repair vendors that have responded to the larger cooperatives, not responding to individual ISD bids? I know you kind of talked about that a little bit, but what we're getting back is we're a part of this, so we're not going to take our time to do this. But then it kind of gives the onus back on us of, we're not getting them to respond to our bids, that we can document that A, B, and C were actually done. We need to use them because of our thresholds, but we can't necessarily validate that co-op over here did A, B, and C. So how do we answer the TDA for something that we can't get the vendor to do?
Mhm.
Like, we're in a rock and hard place.
Do you have
Yes.
A service contract? I mean, do your,
We have had service contracts in the past. When it expired, it truly expired and died on the vine and it had to go back out again. We had no.
but I meant to say, under a co-op, do you have service under a co-op?
No, what
Okay.
we've learned is when you do an equipment bid, you need to write service into that bid because they can't service your equipment. So co-ops do that same thing. So it would be impossible writing service bid, so to speak, but that's where you're finding, we run into that situation in the past where you were bidding something and it broke, and they can give you the part, they can't do your, it wasn't a part.
Yeah, when we had, I don't know if y'all remember when we had ICN here, Institute for Child Nutrition, and they came and they presented about procurement. And that's one of their examples is about service. And I left that day and I was like, I still don't have an answer. I mean, I don't, because service is so obscure. I mean, we can't put a dollar amount on it, a frequency on it. We can do the criteria like, what district are y'all in? Oh, she's Little Elm, okay, y'all. So what Little Elm did, like kind of that criteria, but I mean, they were like, well, say if you're gonna have service, and I even said, go back and look at what you did last year, like $10,000. Well, if it exceeds that, over 10%, then what's it say you're supposed to do if something goes over 10%, your purchases? Aren't you supposed to go back and rebid? Are you gonna rebid in the middle of getting need to get this equipment fixed? I mean, that's.
Probably not. No, it's not.
So we definitely need to get some clarification for you guys, because we need it too.
Mm-hmm. Yep, keep asking, and we're making our list. Okay, so we have a few more. New capital expenditure request form started in October.
That's more of just an FYI. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Sandra, and we're not really sure about this, so, sorry, y'all. But Sandra, she's from Mansfield, trying to shrink here. She just went in and was requesting capital expenditure because it was going to be a large purchase equipment. And she went in and the requirements in TXU and PS are more detailed now. So we were like, why something that was requested maybe in August or even September, what happened in October? The only thing I could guess is the federal year starts over October 1. So possibly that's new regulations went in and there are drop downs. So just to be prepared, if you are looking to purchase a large piece of equipment, you might want to go and explore what's in that capital expenditure request so that you'll be prepared to put that information in there.
It's not just drop downs, but they also want to see your free quotes that you received. Where in the past, I was expecting, I knew my threshold, I knew my cost, I put in a cost to get the approval to keep my timeline going. Here, they want to see those free quotes as part of your capital expenditure request.
So it slowed her process down.
Yes. And I'm going from 1 day, 2 days response, and I put this in on the 10th, and I still don't have a response, so I'll be calling this today. We need to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. This question here, we have what is CE? For this particular training, it's contracting entity or school district, or even if you're an entity that may be purchasing on the behalf of a school district. So that's that one. We forget how many acronyms we have.
And the contract, just to expand on that a little bit, is the contract is between the ISD and TDA. So that's they changed everybody about 4 years ago to contracting entities because we took on the CACFP program, Child and Adult Relief programs, some food service programs. So everybody in the state is now a CE. And there's like probably 2,000.
Okay, so the next question I got was agent contracts equal vended meals. All I really did on that during that presentation was just put it all on one particular slide. But according to the ARM, a person or business that is procured to act on the behalf of the CMP operator to procure products and or services. So it could be an agent to make purchases on the behalf of the CE. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's vended meals though. Just the representative in place of that CE.
Like a broker, yes.
But yeah, like a broker. Mm-hmm.
Well, and Joyce, just one other thing, so the vended meal companies, if I don't think anybody in here, but vended meals, they can get your commodities on your behalf, so that, and also food service management, they are getting the commodity dollars on your behalf. And there were some food service management that were not giving that credit back to the school district. They were just like, they were still charging them their $2.50 per meal and never gave the credit back to the school district. And so that's a pretty big deal. So food service management, they're really scrutinizing that in, our process. Make sure that the school district gets that money back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you share your PowerPoint with us? Yes, absolutely. Yes, I can share I can share the PowerPoint. I could send that out to everybody. That's not a problem. My parking lot is done, but that doesn't mean we still can't answer any more questions that you may have. We'll also be here in the afternoon as well too, to provide some more hands-on technical assistance in relation to just any individual procurement issues that you may have. Otherwise, if there's nothing else, we're right at 11:58. You're free to go, or you may come back as well too. So it's entirely up to you. And also, last I checked, there still wasn't any questions from our Zoom audience. So I'm just going to speak to our Zoom audience and just say thank you for just joining us. And if you have any individual questions or comments or concerns, you are free to contact Karen, Jocelyn, or myself, and I will be sure to email out to you guys that child nutrition resource sheet as well too. So thank you for joining.